My name is Maria. 6 years ago, I married Paul, believing we shared the same dreams and goals. We moved into my luxury apartment on the top floor of a high-rise building with a breathtaking view. I worked as the head of the finance department at a trading company, and my career was taking off. Paul's mother, Lauren, lived nearby and often visited us. From the start, she made it clear she didn't approve of my focus on my career. "A woman's place is at home," she would say, frowning. "You should be taking care of your husband, not running off to work every day." I tried to keep the peace, smiling and nodding when Lauren lectured me about the duties of a good wife. But inside, I was angry. I had told Paul from the beginning that I wanted to focus on my career before starting a family. He had agreed back then, but as time passed, I could see him wavering under his mother's influence. One evening, after a long day at work, I came home to find Paul and Lauren sitting at the dining table, deep in conversation. They went quiet as soon as I walked in, and I felt a chill. "Maria," Paul said with a serious tone, "we need to talk." I dropped my bag and sat down, my heart racing. "What's wrong?" Lauren spoke first. "Maria, dear, we're worried about you. All this work isn't good for you. You're neglecting your home and your husband. When are you going to start thinking about having children?" I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Lauren, Paul, and I have discussed this. We agreed to focus on our careers first, then think about starting a family." Paul shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Maria, maybe it's time to reconsider. We're not getting any younger, and Mom's right, the apartment is a mess, and I'm tired of eating takeout every night." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Paul, are you serious?"
We talked about this.
"You know how important my job is to me." "More important than your family?" Lauren cut in sharply. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "My job is how I'm building a future for our family." "I thought you understood, Paul," I said before storming out of the room and locking myself in our bedroom. As I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the start of more problems. I had no idea how right I was. The next morning, I left for work before Paul even woke up. As I rode the elevator down to the lobby, I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't let anyone, not even my husband, stop me from chasing my dreams. I had worked too hard to get where I was, and I wasn't about to give it all up now. I arrived at the office earlier than usual and stayed late into the night, determined to prove my worth. My dedication didn't go unnoticed. A few hours later, my secretary buzzed in. "Mrs. Michael, the president would like to see you in his office." My heart raced as I made my way to the top floor. Mr. William, our company president, was known for his sharp business skills and for surprising his employees. "Maria, come in," he said when I knocked on his door. "Have a seat." I sat on the edge of the leather chair across from his desk, my hands tightly clasped in my lap. "I've been watching your work closely," Mr. William began, his face unreadable. "And I must say, I'm impressed." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Thank you, sir." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "We're expanding, Maria, merging with a large company from another city. It's a big move, and we need our best people on it." My pulse quickened. Was this going where I thought it was? "I'm planning to promote you," he continued, "to head a new department. But I won't lie to you, Maria. It's going to be tough. You'll have to work harder than ever before. Are you up for it?" I thought about Paul and Lauren, about their expectations of me. Then I thought about all the late nights I had spent going over financial reports and the satisfaction I felt when a project came together perfectly. "Absolutely, sir," I said firmly. "I accept. I won't let you down." As I left Mr. Williams' office, I felt like I was walking on air. This was what I had been working towards all these years. I couldn't wait to share the news with Paul. Surely, when he saw how successful I was becoming, he'd understand why my career was so important to me. On my way home, I stopped at our favorite restaurant and ordered all of Paul's favorite dishes. I picked up a bottle of champagne and a bouquet of roses, feeling excited to celebrate. I wanted to make the evening special. As I juggled the bags and unlocked our apartment door, I called out, "Paul, I'm home, and I've got a surprise." I found him in the living room, lying on the couch with the TV blaring. He barely looked up as I walked in. "Paul, You won't believe what happened today, I said, my excitement overflowing. I'm getting promoted head of a new department. Isn't that amazing? Paul muted the TV and turned to me, but instead of the joy I expected, his expression was cold. So, you'll be working even more now, is that it? My smile faded a little. Well, yes, but think about what this means for us. We can afford that big house we've always wanted, take regular trips around the world. Our future is set. Paul suddenly stood up. Our future? What future, Maria? You're never home as it is. When was the last time we had dinner together? When was the last time we even had a real conversation? I gestured to the bags I brought home. That's why I brought dinner. I thought we could celebrate. Celebrate what? Paul's voice rose. Celebrate you choosing your job over our marriage? Celebrate the fact that I married a woman who cares more about her career than having a family? I felt tears welling up. I thought you'd be happy for me, I whispered. Paul's face softened for a moment, but then he hardened again. I can't do this anymore, Maria. Something has to change. With that, he stormed off to his office, slamming the door behind him. I stood in the middle of our living room, surrounded by the things meant for a celebration that would never happen. I felt more alone than ever. As I put away the food and poured myself a glass of champagne, I couldn't help but wonder, was this the price of success? And if it was I willing to pay it? One evening, as I was leaving the office, I had an idea. I could hire a housekeeper, someone to clean the apartment and cook meals. It would solve Paul's complaints about the mess and the lack of home-cooked food. Feeling satisfied with my solution, I made the necessary arrangements. 3 weeks later, I came home to a spotless apartment with the smell of a home-cooked meal filling the air. I smiled to myself, certain that Paul would be pleased. Then I heard the front door open and close. Paul had come home. I called out, I'm home, and dinner's ready. Paul walked into the kitchen, looking around at the clean space. What's all this? He asked. I hired a housekeeper, I explained, feeling proud. She cleans and cooks. I thought it would make things easier for both of us. But instead of being grateful, Paul's face darkened. So, this is your solution? Hire someone else to do your job. That's not fair, I protested. I'm trying to find a balance. Balance. Paul laughed bitterly. Is that what you call this? Now that you've found someone to replace you in the kitchen, are you planning to find a replacement for yourself in our bed too?
I felt like he had slapped me.
How dare you? I hissed. I've done nothing but try to make our life better, and this is how you react. Paul turned away. I'm going out. Don't wait up. The door slammed behind him, leaving me alone in the spotless kitchen, the dinner getting cold on the table. Over the next few days, Paul and I barely spoke. I buried myself in work, focusing on the upcoming merger. It was easier to deal with spreadsheets than the mess my personal life had become. Then, on a rare Sunday when I didn't have to go to the office, I decided to make an effort. I spent the morning cooking Paul's favorite meals, set the table with our best US, and even put on the dress he had bought me for our last anniversary. When Paul came home, I greeted him with a smile. I thought we could have a nice dinner together, I said, trying to keep my voice light. Just the two of us. Paul looked at me for a long moment and then nodded silently. My heart leapt. Maybe this was the turning point we needed. I was just about to serve the appetizer when the doorbell rang. Confused, I went to answer it, and there, standing in the hallway, was Lauren. Lauren, I said, surprised. We weren't expecting you. Oh, I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd drop by, she said, pushing past me into the apartment. Paul, darling, there you are. I watched in dismay as my carefully planned romantic dinner turned into an impromptu family gathering. Lauren dominated the conversation, slipping in not-so-subtle digs about my housekeeping and lack of maternal instincts. You know, she said, pouring herself more wine. In my day, a woman knew her place was in the home. We took pride in taking care of our husbands and raising our children. I stood up quickly. I think it's time for dessert, I said and hurried to the kitchen. As I leaned against the counter, trying to calm down, I could hear Lauren's voice from the dining room. Paul, darling, you need to talk some sense into her. A woman's duty is to her family first, everything else is secondary. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. This wasn't how I imagined my life would be. I had a successful career and a beautiful home. But at what cost? As I listened to Lauren continue talking about traditional family values, I started to wonder if I had made a big mistake somewhere along the way. One evening, I came home later than usual, still thinking about the day's meetings. As I opened the door to our apartment, I froze. Scattered across the living room floor were baby clothes, tiny onesies, little socks, even a small pair of shoes.
Paul.
I called out, my voice shaking. What's all this? He came out of the bedroom with a strange look on his face. Oh, Mom brought those over. She thought it might help you get in the mood. I picked up a small t-shirt, my fingers trembling. In the mood for what, exactly? For starting a family, of course, Paul said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Maria, we're not getting any younger. It's time we seriously thought about having children. I spent the rest of the evening quietly putting away the baby clothes, my mind in turmoil. Was I being selfish? Was my ambition ruining my marriage? The next morning, I woke up to find more baby items placed around the apartment, a rattle on the coffee table, a baby book on my nightstand, a high chair in the kitchen. It was clear Lauren had a hand in this. I tried to ignore them, but every day there was something new. It felt like the apartment was slowly turning into a nursery, whether I wanted it to or not. One night, I came home to find Lauren sitting on our couch, flipping through a parenting magazine. Lauren, I said, unable to hide my irritation, I didn't know you were coming over. She looked up with a sweet smile. Oh, Maria dear, I hope you don't mind. Paul said I could wait here for him. He's just gone out to get some groceries. I nodded stiffly and went to the bedroom to change. When I came back, Lauren was standing by the window, looking out at the city skyline. You know, Maria, she said without turning around, a view like this is wasted on just 3 people. Imagine how lovely it would be to have a child toddling up to this window, their little hands pressed against the glass, eyes wide with wonder. I felt a headache coming on. Lauren, I appreciate your concern, but Paul and I will decide when we're ready for children, I said. She turned to face me, her eyes hard. And when will that be, Maria? When you've worked yourself into an early grave. When it's too late? I was about to argue, but just then, Paul walked in with grocery bags. He looked between us, sensing the tension. Everything okay here? He asked cautiously. Lauren's demeanor changed instantly. Oh, everything's fine, darling. I was just having a little chat with Maria's about family planning. Paul's eyes lit up. Really? That's great. I knew you'd come around, Maria. I felt cornered and outnumbered. I need some air, I mumbled, grabbing my coat and rushing out of the apartment. A few weeks later, I came home exhausted from another long day at work. The sight that greeted me stopped me in my tracks. Lauren was padding around our living room in fluffy pink pajamas. What's going on here? I demanded, my voice rising with each word. Paul emerged from the kitchen with a defiant look on his face. I've decided that Mom is going to live with us. You're always at work, always away from home. I'm tired of being alone. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You decided this without even discussing it with me? When are you ever here to discuss anything?
Paul shot back.
I turned to Lauren, who was watching our exchange with a smug smile. You can't stay here. This is my home. Paul's face darkened. If you're not happy with this arrangement, you can get out. I felt like I'd been slapped. Excuse me? I bought this apartment before we even got married. It's registered in my name. You can't kick me out of my own home. Lauren stood up, her face twisted with anger. She took a step towards me. Now listen here, you ungrateful. I held up a hand to stop her. Don't come any closer, Lauren. If you lay a hand on me, I'll call the police. Lauren's face crumpled, and she collapsed onto the sofa, clutching her chest dramatically. Oh, Paul, she wailed. Did you hear that? She threatened to call the police on me, your own wife, threatening your mother. That awful job of hers has turned her into a monster. Paul rushed to his mother's side, shooting me a venomous look. How could you, Maria? Your own mother-in-law. I couldn't take it anymore. Without another word, I stormed off to the guest bedroom and locked the door behind me. I had a restless night, tossing and turning as I thought about how crazy the situation had become. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Mr. William, my boss. "Maria, I need you on a plane today," he said right away. "We're ready to move forward with the merger. I need you in Cleveland ASAP." I packed faster than I ever had in my life. As I wheeled my suitcase to the front door, I was met with the cold stares of Paul and Lauren. "I have to go on a business trip," I said, my voice cold. "It's for the merger. I'll be back soon." Paul's lip curled. "Don't bother coming back at all." The flight to Cleveland was a blur. I threw myself into work, grateful for the distraction. The merger negotiations were intense and took all my focus and energy. But in the quiet moments, alone in my hotel room, the reality of my situation hit me hard. After a grueling week of negotiations and sleepless nights, I finally returned home. As I stood outside my apartment door, suitcases at my feet, I felt both exhausted and anxious. I just wanted to collapse into my own bed and forget about everything for a while. But when I tried to unlock the door, the key wouldn't turn. Frowning, I tried again. Nothing. A cold feeling of dread washed over me as I realized what had happened. I knocked on the door, my heart pounding. After a moment, it swung open. Paul and Lauren stood there in casual clothes, looking at me with smug expressions. "Why doesn't my key work?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Paul let out a harsh laugh. "I changed the locks," he said, his eyes full of malice. "You can come in if you're ready to choose your family over your precious career." I stood there, stunned. "What are you talking about?" Paul reached into his pocket and pulled out a stack of papers. With a flourish, he handed them to me. "Divorce papers," he said. "It's time to choose, Maria, your career or your home. What's it going to be?" I looked at Paul, really looked at him, and realized something profound. I didn't love him anymore. The man I had married was gone, replaced by this bitter, manipulative stranger. Lauren's sharp voice cut through my thoughts. "Well, we're waiting. Make your choice." I took a deep breath and straightened up. "I choose my career," I said, my voice steady, "because I don't have a family or a husband, not anymore." Paul's face twisted with anger, but he handed me a pen with a steady hand. I signed the divorce papers right there in the hallway. As soon as I finished, Lauren grabbed my arm and roughly pushed me toward the elevator. "Good riddance," she spat, slamming the door behind me. I stood there staring at the closed door of what used to be my home. A laugh bubbled up in my chest, almost hysterical. I had just been kicked out of my own apartment, the one I bought with my hard-earned money. Too tired to cause a scene, I gathered my suitcases and made my way to a nearby hotel. A few hours later, I got a call from my friend Janet, a realtor who had helped me buy the apartment. "Maria, hon, how are you doing?" Janet asked, concern in her voice. "I've been better," I admitted. "Why do you ask?" Janet hesitated. "I've seen Paul's posts on social media. He's saying some pretty nasty things about you." My stomach dropped. "What kind of things?" "He's calling you a soulless careerist who destroyed your family for your job. He says he sacrificed everything for your relationship and you just used him and tossed him aside. He's even talking about suing you for alimony. People are really sympathizing with him, Maria." I felt a surge of anger. "That's not what happened at all." "I didn't think so," Janet said. "Want to tell me your side?" I gave her a quick rundown of the past week's events. When I finished, Janet was quiet for a moment. "Oh, Maria," she finally said. "I'm so sorry you're going through this. Listen, I'm going to set the record straight with our friends and colleagues. People need to know the truth." "Thanks, Janet," I said, feeling a lump in my throat. "I really appreciate that." As I hung up the phone, I felt a mix of emotions: anger at Paul's lies, gratitude for Janet's support, and a growing determination. Paul might have taken my home for now, but I wasn't going to let him take my reputation or my dignity. The vibration of my phone startled me out of my thoughts. Mr. Williams' name flashed on the screen, and my stomach dropped. I took a deep breath and answered. "Maria, we need to talk," Mr. Williams said, his voice unusually serious. I've heard some concerning things on social media. I closed my eyes, bracing for the worst. Sir, I can explain. No need to explain, Maria, he interrupted. I want to hear your side of the story. Relief washed over me. I took a deep breath and told him everything: the arguments, Lauren moving in, being locked out of my own apartment, and Paul's smear campaign on social media. When I finished, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, to my surprise, Mr. William chuckled. Maria, do you really think I believe that nonsense your ex is spreading? He said. I know you. I've seen your dedication and work ethic. Don't let this shake your confidence. You have every right to stand up for yourself, and I want you to know that the company stands behind you. Tears of relief welled up in my eyes. Thank you, sir. You don't know how much that means to me. A couple of days later, my phone pinged with a social media notification. Paul was doing a live broadcast from my apartment. Curious, I tapped on the video. There was Paul, grinning at the camera, surrounded by a film crew. Hey everyone, exciting news! We're about to start a major renovation on our apartment. The crew from Extreme Makeover Home Edition will be here in 3 weeks to transform this place. I stared at the screen, a plan forming in my mind. Instead of anger, I felt a calm determination. I picked up my phone and dialed Janet's number. It's Maria. I need a huge favor, I said as soon as she answered. I need you to sell my apartment fast, like within 3 weeks. Janet let out a low whistle. That's a tall order, Maria. What's the rush? I quickly explained about Paul's renovation plans. I need new owners in there before that film crew arrives. But Maria, how am I supposed to show the apartment? Paul changed the locks, remember? I'll send you the most recent photos I have of the place. They'll have to do. I know it's not ideal, but... Janet cut me off with a laugh. Oh, honey, you underestimate me. I've got a couple who've been looking for exactly this kind of place in this area. They trust my judgment. With these photos and the building's reputation, I think I can make this happen. 3 weeks flew by in a blur of work and anticipation. Before I knew it, the day of the big renovation reveal had arrived. I sat in my hotel room, laptop open, watching the live stream with bated breath. The camera panned across my former apartment, now filled with an excited film crew and construction workers. Paul and Lauren stood in the center, beaming at the cameras. We're so excited to start this renovation, Paul was saying, his arm around Lauren's shoulders. It's time for a fresh start, a new chapter in our lives. Just as the host was about to give the signal to start demolition, there was a commotion off camera. The door burst open, and in walked a smartly dressed couple, followed by a familiar-faced Janet. I'm sorry, but you can't renovate this apartment, the man said, holding up a stack of papers. It belongs to us now. The camera swung wildly as confusion erupted. Paul's face went from shock to anger. What are you talking about? This is my home. Janet stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. Actually, Paul, this apartment belonged to your ex-wife, Maria. She sold it to this lovely couple 3 weeks ago. Your signature on the renovation documents is a forgery. The host of the show turned to Paul, his face furious. You forged documents? Do you have any idea how much trouble you've caused? Paul and Lauren's faces turned bright red as the host continued to scold them on live television. The scandal unfolded in real time, with millions of viewers watching as Paul's lies fell apart. I couldn't help but laugh, feeling a mix of vindication and relief. It was over. I had won. With the money from selling the apartment, I made a bold move. I bought a charming little house in the city where our company had just completed its merger. It felt poetic, a new home in the city where my career was taking off. To my delight, Mr. William appointed me as the head of our newly acquired company. It was a challenge, but one I was more than ready for. Weeks later, I faced Paul again, this time in a courtroom. He had the nerve to demand half of the money from the apartment sale, plus alimony. I watched with satisfaction as the judge denied his claims, citing his attempt to take my property unlawfully and the forged documents. As we left the courthouse, Paul approached me, his earlier confidence replaced by desperation. Maria, please, he begged. I'm sorry for everything. Can't we start over? Give our marriage another chance. I looked at him, really looked at him and felt nothing, no anger, no sadness, just a deep sense of freedom. I laughed, not unkindly, but with finality. "No, Paul," I said, shaking my head. "We can't start over. But I can start anew, and that's exactly what I'm doing." As I walked away, I felt lighter than I had in years. My career was soaring, I was leading a successful merger, and I was respected by my peers and superiors. I had a beautiful new home, one that was truly mine.